The irony is that environmentalism is really fundamentally based on nature and an understanding of its interconnectedness. And so we got into this morning in Rhett's exercise, the different dimensions of an individual meme, the scientific and the corporate. I mean, these are both of an orange meme, but the academic science and the corporate environment are two. It's a real culture clash there within one meme. And so the green really is based on a fundamental science that comes from the orange meme, right? Even though it's clashing against, the corporate greed and the raping of the environment.
If green, healthy green can do very, very good science, because that's the science we should be using. But we don't even get access to green science because it gets so jammed and so vitriolic due to its own pathology, that it can't see things clearly about that. That's the mean green meme, not healthy green. And very quickly what happens with, what you see as you move up the spectrum is taking more and more perspectives into account. Let me remind you what Clare Graves, the terms that he used for some of these levels, because they surprise people a little bit if they're not familiar with it. For blue, he called it absolutistic. And he also called it saintly. But saintly meaning, well, your Catholic teachers. But absolutistic means there's one and only one. It's fundamentalist. There's one and only one way to see the world, and it's absolutely true, and to hell with you if you don't get it. If you don't get it, you fry in hell. Now, as horrible as that is, again, these are relative. It was a step up from red. Okay. But that's absolutistic. Now, what happens when you move cognitively? Now, cognition is not the same as values, but I'm just going to use spiral dynamics as an example. Cognitively, when you move from blue to orange, there's a differentiation and an integration. This happens at all stages. So the differentiation breaks this absolutistic, encrusted worldview up. And so what Clare Graves called orange, and this sometimes surprises people, he called it multiplistic. And the reason was orange realizes there are multiple perspectives on reality. There are different ways to look at it. And you can't just go in there and say one of them is right and one of them is wrong on some a priori way. So a multiplistic worldview comes into being with orange. Now, orange believes that there is one really good way to decide which of those multiple views is right, and that's test them. So orange is multiplistic and open. That's also why orange is the first world-centric morality. It's not absolutistic. It moves up and can have a world-centric view and judge people regardless of race, color, sex, or creed. Whereas usually the absolutistic systems have some pretty rigid things to say about women, and well, men as well, just as rigid, and gays and all, we know how that kind of, how our blue friends look at those things. So multiplistic, but one best way to figure out which of the competing claims are true, and that's test them, let's do science on them. And then the move from orange to green was a further differentiation, but Clare Graves called green relativistic. So it goes from multiplistic to relativistic. Now, whereas multiplistic had a way to find out which of the competing claims is right, namely test them, the relativistic view doesn't have that. It's so differentiated at that point that it's just all these different worldviews are incommensurable. So you get multiculturalism, but with no way to tell if any could be better or worse. And you get this absolute relativity where everything, that all of a sudden you've lost a moral compass altogether, even though it's a very high stage of development. But nonetheless, healthy versions of that take the systematic view of orange and come up with multiple systems. And that's a very rich kind of scientific endeavor, is to look at how all these different areas have multiple systems interacting and so on. Now, when you get to yellow, the science of yellow takes all these multiple systems and stitches them together into integral networks. And it can actually see the relations between these different systems, and it can make judgments between them. And it can say, we understand that these are all relative in a certain sense, but some of these are better than others, by criteria that are believable. So science is a very important component. As you go up all of these, you ought to have art, morals, and science balanced. That's the definition of health at any level. What happens, orange and green have their own pathologies that are not inherent in orange or inherent in green. And orange was the first historically to differentiate art, morals, and science. This is one of the great accomplishments of the Western Enlightenment, which is that all of a sudden Galileo is allowed to look through his telescope because the church isn't going to determine what's true or not. So you get this whole sort of extraordinary move forward at orange, and you get a differentiation of these spheres. The pathology was, within about 100 years after that, which is really very, very unfortunate, science got so aggressive, not out of malevolence. And again, this is a green distortion. You can't listen to what green has to say about orange. It's very, very cranky. But it is true that the extraordinary gains that science made from Newton to the whole Industrial Revolution swamped art and morals. So serious people looking at what was real knowledge and real this tended to look at science because they weren't just getting the same kinds of really spectacular things going on in art and morals. So there occurred what Habermas and others have called the colonization of art and morals by science. And the result is what we call scientific materialism. So that's the pathology of orange. It's a misuse of science by having it run over everything and not just say this is what it does well, but to say those other things are wrong. And in effect, it became a flatland version that didn't allow interior quadrants. Yes. Now, I understand that there's a whole humanities and all of that, but we can get into that. On balance, scientific materialism is still a very, very strong component. And we still see it today in molecular biology and Edmund O. Wilson's consilience and all of that. It's somehow the belief that everything can be reduced to what we can see in the upper right quadrant. So that's the pathology. It's not necessary to do that. And if it doesn't do that, then you get the other kinds of sciences that you're talking about. And you get art, and you get morals, and you get hermeneutics, and all these things can come into existence. If you move into green, again, you could have just these multiple rich explorations, but the mean green meme turns everything into a social construction of knowledge, an extraordinary relativism, and everything comes unhinged. So that's the fun mess that we're faced with to integrate. So that's sort of like, oh, got to get up mighty early in the morning to start working on that. We've got our work cut out for us because we've got some very, very, very dedicated people that are very smart, that have extremely important partial truths that they know are true. And if you try to attack their truths, they just will not believe you. And so you have to be very careful and acknowledge the important truths they have. But the downsides of what they're doing and the truths they don't have are legion. And it's getting pretty bad. Extreme postmodernism has been officially pronounced dead. And I'll just sort of leave you on that happy note. By Terry Eagleton, who was probably one of the most famous codifiers of postmodernism and writer of the textbook, single largest textbook on the topic. And at their annual conference a year ago, got up and said postmodernism is as dead can be. And you can imagine how snappy a start that got the conference off to. It's like, not only is it dead, we're not giving you your money back. It's like, if you want your money back, socially construct it differently, you know what I mean? So, anyway, science is, that part of it is a crucial component of any integral development into the transpersonal domains. So part of what we see in terms of integral education is gently keeping the important truths that Green brought in. And even the mean green meme, if you look at it on balance, brought in, it enlarged the canon to include texts that were not just sort of somewhat white dead males is the way we generally stated. And all of that was fine. But now we really have to move forward. And we have to move forward by re-embracing the massive amounts of truths that were left as roadkill by the mean green meme on its rise to a power structure in academia. So those of you who are in academia, get out. No, no. Stay, but no. Stay in, and work with us. Come and help us do it.